What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker here on Unique Access Entertainment. Please, as always, hit that subscribe button. As you guys know, it's free and it's right there. That enables us to keep coming to you guys with more and more interviews as often as possible. So please hit that subscribe button, like, share, discuss, and promote Unique Access Entertainment so we can keep coming to y'all as often as possible. Now, today, we have the honor and privilege of being joined by someone I've known for a long time, DJ Wiz. Thank you for coming through, sir.
What's up, my brother Soren, man? It's a pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So DJ Wiz is beyond being an excellent DJ, of course. He's also from Kid and Play, for those that know. And those that don't know, now you know. So, Wiz, we're going to talk a lot about that to get started, of course. So Kid and Play, of course, during the late 1980s, early 1990s, I would say had one of the biggest runs in rap and most successful, from music going into film, going into cartoon, television, etc. So for you early on, let's get a little bit more about you to start with. So how, when, and why did you get interested and want to get in part of the business?
Okay, well, to be honest, when I got into it, there wasn't any business. It was just for fun. I've been talking a lot with my pioneer friends, people like DJ Scratch, and we were chatting last night with a Grand Mixer D.O.C. He brought up a point. He said, "Hey, you guys should bring out some of your old tapes before rap records." So that's when I started DJing. It was before rap records even existed. So, this was just all for fun. I loved the thought of being a DJ, so I learned on my own. Stole my parents' Gerard House plastic turntable and learned how to scratch, wrecked the turntable. We didn't have money as kids, I was in a little crew called the B-Boys in my neighborhood. And we all just kind of like hijacked our parents' equipment from 2 turntables and a house receiver. Those of you who know what a receiver is, basically it was everything in one: the radio, the cassette, and speakers. And we just used the actual balance knob on the receiver as a fader, whether if it was a lever or a knob. But that's how we learned how to DJ. That's how I learned how to DJ. So that's the real origin. That's the origin of me becoming a DJ.
Well, I think it's also important to explain to people at this time too, hip hop culture, the DJ was still so prominent and dominant that I think it's important to explain why you were drawn to DJing as opposed to, say, b-boying or rapping or graffiti.
Okay. Oh, I can be real clear on that. I had no b-boy skills. Like, I was not the athletic dancer type. Not to say I didn't have beats or like could keep a beat, but I was just not that fluid with the movements. I was a little awkward in that area, and I wasn't a rapper. I tried. It wasn't a gift, but the DJing came naturally, and I was into playing instruments early. I wanted to learn how to play the piano, which I didn't learn. I kind of poked around, but I did learn how to play the guitar and the bass at an early age. They were actually teaching that in the school I went to, PS 127. So from that, it was just automatic that I wanted to learn how to manipulate the music as a DJ. So as far as the importance and the recognition of the DJ back then, the DJ was the most important thing. Rappers were secondary, because you look at it from the standpoint of groups back in the 70s. It was always the DJ's name out front, huge. It would say Cool Herc and the Herculords, but his name was out first. You would say Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. It would say, Grand Wizard Theodore and the Fantastic Five. The DJ was always the key. So in our case in Queens, when I was with the B-Boys, it was the Grand Wizard M.E., which was my actual name back then as a DJ. And whoever else. I was in a group called the Turnout Brothers that kind of got some fame back then in late 70s, early 80s. Grand Wizard and me and the Turnout Brothers. And the Turnout Brothers consisted of myself as the DJ with 4 rappers. Ron Lawrence, who is known as Ronnie Tough. The Kid Cool Out, who is Kid from Kid and Play. Another brother named Rockin' B, his name was Bernard. And another guy named Clevio the Rockchild, whose real name was Cleve. So again,
Amon Ra Lawrence.
Amon Ra, yeah. Let's keep it all the way 100. My brother Ron Lawrence.
The cipher.
Things in the cipher. Moving on him. Him and D. Angeletti were 2 kings in the cipher, but Ron has been around since way before that. You know, Ron was in my group, the B-Boys, as well. You know, he was one of us in that group, and Ron was actually very key in my interest in DJing because his older brother, was a very popular DJ in the New York City area. His name was Dance Master. He was a mobile DJ, but he also got to play in the clubs like Studio 54, Regine's, all of these big time clubs. And he was a professional DJ. Like he had real DJ equipment. So when I would go visit Ron, his brother was living there, and his brother had a room with all of his equipment and all of his records. And you want to talk about like Playland, Candyland, like we would just go in there and marvel and wish we had that equipment and all of the records. I mean, he had records from the floor all the way up to the ceiling, like piles and piles of promotional stuff that we never saw again.
How did he get them?
They were record pools back then.
Oh, okay.
They were actual record pools. And yeah, I mean, you'd see test pressings, promotional singles, and you know, you talk about promotional singles. In the documentary that I was a producer on called Founding Fathers, which is another production of Ron Lawrence and my brother Hassan Poor, we talk about the importance of the 12-inch disco single, that a lot of hip hop breaks and a lot of hip hop instrumental sections that we use later originated on the 12-inch disco single. And Ron's brother had thousands of them. So it was a pleasure to be in that room and to wish that I could own that Technics 1100 turntables that he had. So yeah, man, I gotta give mad props to Ron and letting us go in that room, you know?
Well, speaking of techniques and turntables, I think it's important to explain from your perspective what happened with the difference with when the 1200s came out, how that changed the game, because a lot of people forget or don't understand or appreciate that.
Well, I would say that the 1200, well, first of all, there was another turntable before that we caught a glimpse of. It was the 1800. The 1800 was another one that, you know, we just looked at and salivated at as kids, because we were kids. We were literally kids. We couldn't afford any of that. I didn't get my first 1200s until it was kid and playtime, pretty much. You know, I was not there. I just didn't have it. I had equipment. I had the Technics SLD1s, which were the poor man's version of any direct drive turntable. It was the lowest on the totem pole, pretty much. But that's where I honed my skills after I, you know, broke my parents' Girard house turntable. So between the two SLD1s and my Gemini 850 mixer, that's where I learned how to do my thing. And then, you know, just went up slowly. You know, I was lucky enough to work small jobs and eventually get better equipment. But I spent most of my money on records. You know, I still have all of those records that I had from back when I was a kid. I have all of them.
So what would you guesstimate your collection to be number-wise?
I've never thought about that. And I think that's subjective to who you ask, because if I if you're not a record collector, somebody's going to come and say, "Oh, I'll give you $100 for your records," and where one record could cost $100. I have thousands of records, and it really just depends on the eye that's looking at the collection. Yeah, I mean, listen, I still have certain albums, extra copies that I haven't opened that could be worth a pretty penny. So I don't know. I really got to think about that because I still have records in Los Angeles in storage too. I have like about 20 crates of records out there. Yeah. And until I can get them back to the East Coast, they're going to sit right there. I'm not selling them. I'm not getting rid of them. Some of them are just too priceless for me. So
I know the feeling.
Oh, man.
No, I'm sure I don't have nearly as many as you, but I got a few.
Yeah. And you see, I don't know how you feel about them, but I know that there are certain records that I know are just irreplaceable to me, even not just because they're old, but because of the memories that are with some of these actual 12 inches. I could pick up two 12 inches of a record like Sing Sing from the Gaz Band. And it's like, I learned how to DJ with these two 12 inches. So I don't know what the value of that is. To me, it's priceless.
Yeah, and it's not that song, it's those actual records.
Yes, that's my point. So it depends who you ask,
Gotcha. So then what, given all the crews and people and everything that you were running around with before Kid and Play, what made you and Kid kind of connect so well from the early days that made that last longer and different and better?
Well, it's a windy road, this story right here, because even though I was in the group, the Turnout Brothers, as the DJ, Kid was in the Turnout Brothers. Play and Hurby Lovebug, our producer, were basically our neighborhood rivals, but we were all friends. Hurby, Play, another rapper named Romeo, another rapper named Prince. They were called the Super Lovers, the Super Lovin' Three. And, we would do jams together. We would do gigs together, and their DJ was Quicksilver. So we were all just neighborhood friends that just did gigs together at the local high schools, Flushing High, 127 Park, wherever, So we kind of got our fame in the neighborhood and in Queens and certain other parts of the cities for different reasons. Hurby and the Super Lovers were like the first from our neighborhood to really venture out. And they played at the Disco Fever and participated in a competition. Like they had like a talent show competition for rappers, and they won, I think, third prize or something like that. And that was a big deal. That was a major big deal, especially coming from Queens. You know how people hated on the other borough, especially Queens. Queens was like, oh man, y'all don't know nothing. Queens is, the guys used to call it the desert. The 5% is, Queens is the desert. There's nothing out there, nothing. But yeah, so the correlation between Kid and Play is because we were in the same groups we were friends, and we eventually came together much later because those groups were like 79, 80, 81, 82. Kid and Play is 87. So in that 5-6 year span, those two were in multiple different groups. The most famous one was called Fresh Force. Fresh Force, they had a couple songs. She's a Skeezer, Rock Me. I would say those are probably the most two well-known. Oh, and another one called All Hail the Drums. I cannot forget that one because they actually performed on this local TV show out here called the Joe Franklin Show. There's video footage on YouTube. If y'all want to see it, go there and just type Kid and Play Joe Franklin or Fresh Force Joe Franklin. It's out there.
Be sure to check out the History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
There will be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on your TV back with NWA.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.